July 30th, 1945. Midnight, the Philippine Sea. A Japanese torpedo strikes the USS Indianapolis. Then another, the ship, one of the most decorated cruisers in the United States Navy, sinks in 12 minutes. Approximately 900 men make it into the water. They have no lifeboats, no rafts, no rescue equipment. And here's the part that no one talks about. The United States Navy does not know the ship is gone. No one is coming. For 4 days and 5 nights, 900 American sailors float in the open ocean, without food, without fresh water, in shark-infested waters, in the largest shark attack in recorded human history. When rescue finally comes, not because the Navy came looking, but because a pilot spotted them by accident, only 317 men are still alive. The Navy's response to what happened next is one of the most shameful chapters in American military history, and almost no one knows the full story. Act 1, The Secret Mission. To understand the full story of the USS Indianapolis, you have to start not with the sinking, but with what the ship had just delivered. On July 26, 1945, 4 days before she was torpedoed, the Indianapolis arrived at the island of Tinian in the Pacific. She had just completed a secret mission of extraordinary importance. She had delivered the core components of Little Boy, the atomic bomb that would be dropped on Hiroshima 11 days later, the uranium, the detonator components, the specialized parts that no other ship in the Pacific was carrying. The Indianapolis had transported them across the Pacific at maximum speed, alone, without escort, because speed and secrecy mattered more than safety. The crew did not know what they were carrying. They knew it was important. The cargo had been loaded under extraordinary security, guarded by Army personnel who answered to no one on the ship, stored in a locked compartment that the ship's own officers could not access. They knew it was secret. They did not know it was a component that would, within 2 weeks, kill approximately 140,000 people in a single morning. After delivering her cargo at Tinian, the Indianapolis was ordered to proceed to Leyte Gulf in the Philippines for training exercises. She sailed alone, no escort, no destroyer protection, through waters that American naval intelligence knew contained active Japanese submarine activity. The routing order that sent her through those waters without escort has never been fully explained. Act 2, The Sinking. Shortly after midnight on July 30th, 1945, Japanese submarine I-58, commanded by Commander Makitsura Hashimoto, found the Indianapolis on the surface. Hashimoto fired 6 torpedoes. 2 hit. The first torpedo struck the bow. The second struck amidships, igniting the fuel and ammunition stored there. The resulting explosions were catastrophic. The ship lost power immediately. The radio room was destroyed, but operators in other parts of the ship managed to send distress signals on emergency equipment. 3 distress signals were sent. All 3 were received. None of them were acted upon. One receiving officer later said he thought the signal was a Japanese trap. Another was reportedly intoxicated. A third ordered his men not to disturb him. 3 separate distress signals from a sinking American warship, received, acknowledged, and ignored. The Indianapolis sank in 12 minutes. Of her crew of approximately 1,196 men, around 300 went down with the ship. Approximately 900 made it into the water. They floated in the Philippine Sea with almost nothing, a small number of life jackets, a few rafts, and the open ocean in every direction. Act 3, 4 days in the water. What the survivors of the Indianapolis endured in the 4 days and 5 nights that followed is almost beyond description. It is among the most harrowing survival stories in human history. The immediate crisis was the sharks. The sinking had drawn oceanic white-tipped sharks, a species known for persistence and aggression in open water, and they arrived in numbers that survivors estimated in the hundreds. The attacks began almost immediately and continued, relentlessly, for 4 days. Men were taken from the water in daylight and in darkness. Men died defending their shipmates. Men died of wounds from attacks that were not immediately fatal. The psychological terror of waiting, of floating in open water, knowing that the sharks were there, knowing that someone near you might be taken at any moment, knowing that you might be next, broke men who had survived the sinking itself. But the sharks were not the only threat. Dehydration set in within the first day. The Philippine Sea water surrounding the men was undrinkable. Saltwater ingestion accelerates dehydration and causes hallucinations, madness, organ failure. Men who drank seawater began losing their minds. They attacked their shipmates. They swam away from the group toward mirages of land or rescue ships that did not exist. They drowned. They were taken by sharks. The men around them could do nothing but watch. Exposure compounded everything. The Philippine Sea is warm, but 4 days in open water. The sun blistering during the day, the temperature dropping at night, produce severe sunburn, hypothermia, saltwater ulcers that ate through skin. Men died of injuries that should not have been fatal because there was no way to treat them. Through all of it, the surviving officers tried to maintain order. They organized the men into groups. They kept the most seriously injured at the center of the groups, where the sharks were less likely to reach them. They enforced discipline against drinking seawater. They kept men alive through presence and authority when there was nothing physical left to offer. Act 4. The Rescue and the Court-Martial. On August 2nd, 1945, the fourth day, Lieutenant Wilbur Gwynn was flying a routine patrol mission when he spotted an oil slick in the Philippine Sea. He flew lower and saw men in the water. He immediately radioed for help and dropped supplies. Within hours, rescue ships arrived. Of the approximately 900 men who had entered the water, 317 were still alive. 583 had died in the water, from sharks, from dehydration, from exposure, from drinking seawater, from wounds, from simply losing the will to keep floating after 4 days of watching the men around them die. The rescue revealed something the Navy had hoped would remain unexamined. The Indianapolis had been missing for 4 days, and no one in the United States Navy had noticed. The Navy's response was to court-martial the ship's captain, Charles McVay III. McVay was charged with hazarding his ship by failing to zigzag, a standard evasive maneuver. The charge was deeply controversial. Zigzagging in conditions at night was of debatable effectiveness. The routing that had sent the Indianapolis through dangerous waters without escort was not examined. The 3 ignored distress signals were not examined. The failure of anyone in the Navy to notice the ship was missing for 4 days was not examined. Commander Hashimoto, the Japanese submarine commander who had sunk the ship, was brought to Washington to testify against McVay, an enemy commander, testifying against an American naval officer in an American court-martial. Hashimoto testified that zigzagging would not have made a difference, that he would have sunk the Indianapolis regardless. McVay was convicted. He was the only American naval commander court-martialed for losing a ship to enemy action in World War II. He received hate mail from the families of men who had died, letters blaming him personally for their sons' deaths. He received this mail for the rest of his life. In November 1968, Charles McVay III shot himself on his front lawn in Litchfield, Connecticut. He was using his Navy-issued revolver. In his hand was a toy sailor figure. He was 70 years old. Closing sequence. In 2000, 55 years after the sinking, the United States Congress passed a resolution stating that McVay's record should reflect that he was exonerated for the loss of the Indianapolis. President Clinton signed it. The Navy subsequently amended McVay's record. The resolution came after a sustained campaign by survivors of the Indianapolis, men in their 70s and 80s who had spent decades fighting to clear their captain's name. It also came after a 6th grade student named Hunter Scott, who had become interested in the story after watching the film Jaws, in which the character Quint delivers a famous monologue about surviving the Indianapolis sinking, testified before Congress on McVay's behalf. The exoneration came 32 years after McVay's death. It could not reach him where he was. The USS Indianapolis was found on the floor of the Philippine Sea in 2017, located by a research team led by Paul Allen, at a depth of approximately 18,000 feet. She rests where she sank, with 300 men still inside her. The site is now a federally protected war grave. 879 men died because of the sinking of the USS Indianapolis. Most of them died not in the explosion but in the water. In 4 days that the United States Navy does not have a satisfactory explanation for not ending sooner. Their captain was court-martialed for losing a ship that the Navy did not notice was missing. Fade to black. The USS Indianapolis sank in 12 minutes on July 30th, 1945. Of approximately 900 men who entered the water, only 317 survived. 3 distress signals were received. None were acted upon. The Navy did not notice the ship was missing for 4 days. Captain McVay was the only American commander court-martialed for losing a ship to enemy action in World War II. He was exonerated by Congress in 2000, 32 years after his death. The wreck was located in 2017 at 18,000 feet. 300 men remain inside, and